Ladies and gentlemen, let's talk about a ghost, a cunning illusionist, a shapeshifter lurking in your mind. It whispers in your ear, telling you that you are important, that you are separate from the rest of existence, that you must protect this little fortress of self-image at all costs. This ghost, it has a name. It's called the ego. The ego is a mask we wear, a costume stitched together from fears, desires, and stories we tell ourselves. But have you ever wondered, who would you be without it? If you could step outside this mental cage, what would you see? You see, we spend our lives defending this illusion. We chase approval, avoid rejection, grasp at control. But control is a joke. You weren't born with a name, a job, or a reputation. You were simply here alive, breathing, part of something vast, and yet the ego tricks us into believing that we are separate from the universe, that we are islands, not waves in the ocean. And let me tell you a secret. The moment you let go of the ego, something incredible happens. You stop fighting life. You stop clinging to the shore, and instead you flow. Today, let's take a deep breath. Let's question this mask we wear. Let's pull back the curtain and see what's behind it. Because beyond the ego there is freedom, and that's where our journey begins. The ego is nothing more than a hallucination we mistake for reality. It is a trick of the mind, a phantom that whispers, "I am you." But what if that voice is just an echo, a ripple on the surface of something far deeper? From the moment we are born, we are given a name, an identity, a story. We are told who we are, where we belong, and what we must become. And so we stitch these ideas together into a fragile sense of self, a mask we wear to navigate the world. We become actors playing a role, believing the character we portray is real. But is it? Consider this. Before you had words to define yourself, before you even knew what I meant, you were simply aware. No boundaries, no limitations, no separation. You were just here. Yet, as we grow, we learn to divide, to draw lines between me and not me. We convince ourselves that we are isolated individuals, locked inside our own heads, looking out at a universe that is distant and indifferent, but this is the greatest illusion of all. The ego, this little voice claiming ownership of thoughts, achievements, and emotions, is not your true self. It is a construct, a mental program running in the background. It feeds on comparison, thrives on conflict, and demands constant validation. It tells you that you must win, that you must be better, that you must protect your pride. And so you struggle, you build walls, you defend a version of yourself that is no more real than a shadow. But what happens when you see through it? When you realize that the ego is not who you are, but simply a mask, a habit of thought, suddenly life changes. The weight of judgment disappears. The need to prove yourself vanishes. You stop fighting against the current and begin to move with it, like a leaf carried effortlessly by the river. Because the truth is, you are not separate. You were never separate. The wave is not apart from the ocean is the wave. And when you let go of the illusion of ego, you don't lose yourself. You find yourself not as a tiny, anxious fragment of the universe, but as the universe itself awake and alive. We live under the grand illusion that we are in control, that with enough effort, enough planning, enough force, we can bend life to our will. But life does not work that way. Life is not a machine with levers to pull and buttons to press. It is a river wild, unpredictable, constantly moving. And yet we struggle against it, thrashing and grasping, trying to force the current to obey us. But what happens when you let go? When you stop paddling frantically upstream and allow yourself to move with the flow, you begin to see that the very nature of existence is effortless. The planets do not strain to revolve around the sun. The trees do not struggle to grow. The ocean does not fight to create waves. Everything happens as it must, without force, without resistance. And so too does life unfold in its own rhythm, whether we accept it or not. The need for control is born from fear, the fear of the unknown, the fear of chaos, the fear that if we do not take charge, everything will fall apart. But that is another trick of the mind. Look at the birds in the sky, the rivers winding through valleys, the seasons shifting without command. There is no one controlling these things, yet they move in perfect harmony, and you are no different. The harder you cling to control, the more suffering you create. You try to control people, and they resist. You try to control outcomes, and they change. You try to control your own thoughts, and they scatter like leaves in the wind. But when you surrender, when you trust the flow of life, you realize that you are never... Imagine standing in the ocean, waves rolling in one after another. You have two choices. You can brace yourself, resist, try to push the waves back and be knocked over again and again. Or you can relax, lift your feet, and float. The waves still come, but now they carry you. This is the difference between living with resistance and living with flow. Life is not something to be controlled, only experienced. And when you stop grasping, stop clinging, stop demanding that things happen on your terms, you will finally understand the beauty of surrender. You will see that life was never against you. It was only waiting for you to stop fighting and join the dance. There is a great fear in letting go of the ego, as if giving up this sense of self means fading into nothingness. But that is only because we have mistaken the mask for the face. We have spent our lives identifying with a collection of thoughts, memories, and labels, believing that without them we would cease to exist. But what if the opposite is true? What if letting go of the ego is not the end, but the beginning? The ego is a prison, built brick by brick from expectations, comparisons, and insecurities. It convinces you that you must always be someone important, someone successful, someone admired. It creates an exhausting performance, where every moment must be curated, every flaw must be hidden, and every action must serve to reinforce the image of who you are. But have you ever stopped to ask, who would I be without this act? The ego demands constant defense. It takes offense at the slightest criticism, feels wounded when ignored, and panics when faced with uncertainty. It builds walls between you and the world, whispering that you must protect yourself at all costs. And yet, the more you protect this fragile sense of self, the more isolated you become. The more you grip onto your identity, the more suffering you create. But when the ego dissolves, when the walls come crashing down, what remains? Not emptiness, not loss, but freedom. The freedom to exist without fear, to move without hesitation, to be without needing to prove anything. Without the ego, there is no longer an I to be offended, no reputation to maintain, no image to uphold. There is only presence, only awareness, only life, unfolding as it always has, without the burden of self-importance. Think of a river. The ego is like a rock sitting in the middle, disrupting the flow, creating turbulence. It resists, it divides, it forces the water to move around it. But when the rock is gone, the river flows smoothly, effortlessly, without obstruction. This is what happens when the ego dies. Life no longer feels like a struggle. There is no longer an artificial boundary between you and existence itself. When the ego dies, you do not become nothing, you become everything. You are no longer a separate entity trapped in a body, but part of the vast, infinite play of the universe. The ocean does not fear losing a single wave, because it knows it is the wave, just as it is the whole. In the same way, when the illusion of the separate self fades, you do not disappear. You simply remember what you have always been, and that is true freedom. Not the freedom to control, to possess, or to win, but the freedom to let go. To live without resistance. To laugh at the absurdity of taking yourself so seriously, because in the end, the ego is nothing but a story, and the moment you stop telling it, you are free. There is a voice in your head, constantly speaking. It narrates your life, comments on the world, judges, plans, worries, and recalls the past. It tells you who you are, what you like, what you fear, and because this voice is always there, always chattering, you believe it is you. But have you ever stopped to ask who is listening? We go through life completely identified with our thoughts, caught in a stream of endless mental noise. If a thought appears, we assume it must be true. If an emotion arises, we assume it must define us. But thoughts are not reality. They are like clouds drifting through the sky, temporary, ever-changing, and beyond our control. Some are bright and pleasant, others dark and stormy, but none of them are you, because you are the sky, the open space in which these thoughts appear and disappear. Yet, the ego clings to thoughts as if they are absolute truth. If a negative thought arises, I am not good enough. I will fail. Nobody cares. The ego grasps it and says, this is who I am. But a thought is just a passing event, no more real than a breeze. You do not choose your thoughts any more than you choose the shape of the clouds. They arise on their own, shaped by experiences, conditioning, and countless unconscious influences. And just as quickly, they fade, making room for the next. But here's the problem. When you believe you are your thoughts, you become their prisoner. If an anxious thought arises, you feel you are anxious. If an angry thought appears, you feel you are angry. You get tangled in the drama of your own mind, swept away like a leaf in the wind. But the moment you step back and observe, everything changes. You begin to see that thoughts are just patterns, just fleeting impulses. You can watch them come and go, just as you watch cars pass on a road. A thought only has power over you if you give it attention. The more you believe in it, the more it controls you. But when you simply witness it without attachment, without judgment, it loses its grip. This is the beginning of freedom. The moment you recognize that you are not your thoughts, you create distance. You become the observer, no longer lost in the mind's endless chatter. And in that space between you and your thoughts, there is peace, there is clarity. There is the realization that beyond all the noise, beyond all the stories your mind tells you, there is something deeper. Something still, something vast, something untouched by any passing thought. That is your true nature, not the endless stream of words in your head, but the silent awareness that sees them come and go. The sky, not the clouds. The ocean, not the waves. The witness, not the noise. And when you live from that place, no thought, no matter how fearful, how self-critical, how urgent, can shake you, because you know it is not you, it never was. There is a great illusion we carry, the belief that we are separate individuals moving through the world, making choices, shaping our own destiny. We think of ourselves as isolated beings, in control of our lives, standing apart from everything else. But this is not true. Look at a wave in the ocean. It rises, it moves, it crashes, it disappears. But was the wave ever separate from the ocean? Not was the ocean, simply expressing itself in a temporary form. And so it is with you. You are not an isolated speck of existence, struggling to carve out a life of your own. You are life itself. You are the universe in motion, in expression, in play. The universe does not exist outside of you, just as a dance does not exist without the dancer. You are not a separate self. Apart from the world, you are the world. Every breath you take is borrowed from the trees. Every thought that arises in your mind is shaped by the world around you. Every cell in your body was once part of something else's star, an ocean, an ancient creature from long before you were born. There is no dividing line between you and the rest of existence. Yet, the ego tells you otherwise. It whispers that you must take control, that you must struggle, that you must prove yourself. But the moment you let go of this illusion, you see the truth: you were never meant to control life, only to move with it. Just as the wind does not struggle to blow, just as the river does not force its way to the sea, you are meant to flow. The universe is not something happening to you, it is something happening through you. When you realize this, life becomes effortless. You stop trying to force things to go your way, and instead trust the way things unfold. You stop seeing yourself as a separate being fighting against the current, and instead recognize that you are the current. Every experience, every joy, every sorrow, every moment of laughter or loss, it is all the universe playing through you. experiencing itself in infinite ways. Think of music. A song is not a single note held forever. It is a sequence of rising and falling, of tension and release. The beauty is in the movement, in the unpredictability, in the play. And that is what life is splay, a great cosmic dance, moving, shifting, flowing. You are not the dancer controlling the steps, you are the dance itself. And when you understand this, fear dissolves. There is no need to cling, to grasp, to worry about where you are going. The wave does not fear reaching the shore, because it knows it will always return to the ocean. And so, you too can let go. You can trust. You can move freely, knowing that you were never alone, never separate, never anything but a beautiful expression of the infinite. The universe plays through you, and the greatest freedom is to simply let it. And so, you see, life was never something to control, to conquer, to hold on to. It was always something to experience, something to flow with, not fight against. The ego tells you that you are separate, that you must protect yourself, that you must build walls, prove yourself, and struggle to define who you are. But what if you were never meant to be a fixed identity? What if you were meant to be like the river, always moving, always changing, always part of something greater? The death of the ego is not the loss of yourself, it is the beginning of true freedom. When you let go of the illusion of control, of attachment, of self-importance, you do not become nothing, you become everything. You are no longer trapped in a prison of your own making, no longer weighed down by the constant need to defend, achieve,